This is the procedural numeracy test for Year 9, 2015. Question 1. 25% of 200 grams. Well, 25% is a quarter, and the easiest way to work out a quarter of something is half it, so half of 200 grams is 100 grams, and half of the 100 grams is 50 grams. So that's my answer. The second half of this question says blank percent of 200 grams is 20 grams. Well, to turn 200 into 20, you divide by 10, so that therefore is 10%. Tomato plants are sold in trays of 12. Di wants 100 tomato plants. How many trays should he buy? Well, if I do 100 divided by 12, then what that tells me is I could get, that goes in 8 times, but 12 eighths are 96, so there's a remainder of 4, so that means I would need 9 trays altogether in order to get the 100. Question 3. Blank divided by 3 plus 40 equals 100. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say to myself, well, okay, if I were to work backwards and use inverse operations, I would start off with doing 100 take away 40, which gives me 60. Now then, if I do the opposite of divide by 3 and I times by 3, I would then get 180, which is my answer. The cost for hire in this jet ski is £32 for every 30 minutes. The question asks, how much is it to hire for 2.5 hours? So I want to ask myself, how many 30-minute slots would 2.5 hours be? Well, an hour is 2 lots of 30 minutes. The second hour is another 2 lots of 30 minutes. And the half an hour is another lot of 30 minutes. So altogether, that's 5 periods of 30 minutes. So what I would do is I would do 32 times 5, which gives me £160. Question 5. 1,000 take away 19.3 plus 24.7. Well, the trick here really is to start with the 24.7 and take away the 19.3. And what that's going to give you is it is going to give you 5.4. Then basically that gets added on to the 1,000 to give you 1,005.4. Question 6. Circle the value below which is equivalent to 4%. Well, 4% means 4 out of 100, and if we divide 4 by 100, we get 0.04. Insert one pair of brackets to make this calculation correct. Well, the pair of brackets would have to go around the 4 add 6. And basically what we have then is we have that bracket becomes 10. So we have 90 times 10 is 900, divided by 2 is 450. Question 8. 20% of 60 equals 40% of blank. Well, if it's going to be twice the percentage, but it's got to be equal to the first statement, what we need is we need a number that is half the size. So 40% of 30 would be the same as 20% of 60. This is a graph to change Canadian dollars into pounds. So the first thing we've been asked to find out is what is 32 Canadian dollars in pounds. So I need to figure out where that would be on the Canadian dollars axis, which is the horizontal axis. So first things first, what is each square worth? Well, between 0 and 20 we have 5 squares. So if we divide 20 by 5, that tells me that each little square is worth 4. So where would 32 be? Well, what it would be is it would be 2 squares back from 40, because that's taking 4 away and taking 8 away. So then I would go up to the graph and I would read across, and the answer is £20. Now the next question is, what number of Canadian dollars would £100 be? Well, I'm going to use my answer from above, to be honest. So what I notice is if I times £20 by 5, gave me 100. So if I times the 32 Canadian dollars by 5, also, it would give me the answer, and that is going to be 160 Canadian dollars. Mrs. Jones wants to buy a jacket, skirt, jumper and tie. Estimate the nearest pound her change from £100. So I would round the jacket to £30, the skirt to £15, the jumper to £15 and the tie to £5. And when I add these items up, it comes to 5 carry 1, 3, 4, 5, 65 pounds. On Nia's map, 4 centimetres represents 1 kilometre. She walks a route that measures 24 centimetres on the map. So what would this be in kilometres? Well, we know that 4 centimetres and 24 centimetres are linked by a multiplying of 6. So that means that a 1 kilometre has to be also multiplied by 6. And that means that our 24 centimetre line will be 6 kilometres. Nia walks at an average speed of 5 kilometres. At that speed, how long would she take to walk 7.5 kilometres? Well, in the first hour, she would walk 5 kilometres. If she were to walk at that speed for another full hour, she'd walk 10 kilometres, but that's too far. But hang on, if she was to walk half that 5 kilometre distance, so 2.5 kilometres, that would give us the total of 7.5. So that is 1 hour and a half an hour walk altogether. Here we have to write an equivalent ratio to 1 to 5. Now I notice the first number has become a 3, so what's happened here is essentially both numbers have to be multiplied by 3. So the second number would be 15. Question 13, part 1, a quarter times a quarter. Multiplying fractions, we multiply the numerators, so 1 times 1 is 1. Multiply the denominators, so 4 times 4 is 16. 3 quarters squared is also really a multiplication. It's 3 quarters times 3 quarters. So 3 times 3 would give us a top number, numerator of 9, and 4 times 4 would be 16. Question 14, work out the circumference of this circle. So the formula for circumference is pi times diameter. We've been told we're going to use 3.14 for pi, it tells us that in the question. And the diameter is the distance across the circle going through the centre. So that's not the 10 given, but it is in fact 20. So a quick way to multiply by 20 would be to double and then times by 10. So double 3.14 is 6.28, and to times by 10 would become 62.8 centimetres, which is our answer. 0.3 times 0.2, well, each of those has 1 decimal place each, so our answer must have to have 2. Common wrong answer is 0.6, but the correct answer is 0.06. The second part of this question, 5 divided by 0.05. Well, when dividing by a decimal, what we need to try and do is turn that number we're dividing by into a whole number. So if we times both parts of this by 100, what we create is a new sum, which is 500 divided by 5, and that goes in 100 times, which is our answer. Decrease £35 by 10%. Well, 10% of 35 would be divided by 10, which is £3.50, and a decrease means we have to do the £35 minus the £3.50, which is £31.50. 2 to the power 3 times 2 to the power 4. We use the rule here of adding the indices, so the overall answer is 2 to the power 7. The second part, the rule for division of indices is to subtract the powers, so 10 take away 7 is 2 to the power 3. Here is a table showing top 14 winners of Olympic medals for athletics. The question that goes with it is, what fraction of these 14 athletes won more than 12 medals? So what we're doing is we're looking at more than 12 medals, so it's everything above that line. So what we have is all of these values. So 3 add 1, 2, 3, that's 6 out of 14 won more than 12 medals. The second question underneath says, altogether, how many medals did the 14 athletes win? Well, one athlete won 22 medals, so that's a total of 22. One athlete won 18, so that's a total of 18. One athlete won 15, that's a total of 15. But 3 athletes won 14 medals. So if we wanted to work out the total there, if we do 3 times 14, which is 42, that would give us the total of the medals for those 3 athletes. And if we do the same with the last 2 numbers, 8 times 12, which is 96, that would give us the total for those 8 athletes. We can then add up these 5 numbers, and that would give us the grand total for the number of medals. So 8 and 2 is 10, 15, 16, 17, 23 for the units column, and 2, 3, 4, 8, 17, 18, 19. So that's 193 medals in total for the athletes. Take the scatter diagram that shows a negative correlation. Negative correlations generally slope downhill as we move from left to right in the graph, so that means it's the bottom right. The formula to change temperatures in degrees C to degrees F is multiply the temperature in degrees C by 9/5, then add 32. So if I want to change minus 10 degrees C to degrees F, what I first of all have to do is multiply that by 9/5. Now, to multiply a whole number by a fraction, it's probably easier to make it have a denominator of 1. That will then give us minus 90/5. Now, if I have to divide the 90 by 5, that goes in 18 times, and that will work out as minus 18. The bit I've not yet done is I haven't done the then add 32. So if I do minus 18 add 32, that will give me the final answer. And the answer is 14 degrees F. Before a pay rise, a person earned £8 an hour. After a pay rise, they earn £8.25 an hour. Circle the value that shows the approximate percentage increase. Now, what we have here is an increase of 25 pence per hour. So I was looking at how many 25p's go into the original value, which is £8. And the answer is, well, there's 4 25p's in £1, and then there's £8, so that's 32 times. So it's an increase of 1 over 32. So then I was thinking, right, okay, if I had to work out that fraction of 100%, well, 32 goes into 100 roughly 3 times. What fraction is exactly halfway between 1/10 and 3/5? So to find the midpoint of two numbers, we would add them and then half the answer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add up the 10th and 3/5. But I can't add 3/5 to 10ths because they have different denominators. So I'm straight away going to change 3/5 into 6/10. So it has the same denominator as the first fraction. So that gives me 7/10. Now, if I'm going to half that fraction, what I would need to do is actually make the denominator twice the size. So the answer is 7 out of 20. 1/3 equals 0.3 recurring. What fraction is equal to 0.03 recurring? Well, when I looked at these two numbers, what I could see was that to make the second decimal, it's divided the first decimal by 10. So what I'm going to do is divide the fraction by 10, giving me 1/30th. The table shows information about a group of teenagers. Their mean age is 17 years and 6 months, and the range of their ages is 3 years and 3 months. Complete the table to show information about the same group of teenagers exactly a year later. So exactly a year later, each of their ages will have increased by 1 year. So their average age, their mean age, is going to be 18 years and 6 months. But their range of ages will not have changed because the oldest person and the youngest person will have both aged by a year, so the gap between those two ages will remain the same. So it's still going to be 3 years and 3 months.